There is a moment most people experience somewhere in their late 20s or early 30s. A quiet moment, usually on a Sunday evening, when they look at their bank account and feel a strange, unsettling confusion. The number in that account is not small. They are earning more than their parents ever did at the same age, more than they once imagined they would need, and yet the feeling of financial security, that calm, settled sense that everything is handled, never quite arrives. The paycheck comes, the bills go out, the balance resets, and the cycle begins again. Most people assume this is a personal failure, a discipline problem, a matter of not trying hard enough or not being smart enough with money. But the data tells a different story, and that story begins not with individual behavior, but with system design. The modern salary structure was not built to make workers wealthy. It was built to make workers reliable. This is not a conspiracy. It is simply the logical output of how labor markets evolved over the last century and a half. When industrialization created the need for large, consistent workforces, employers needed a mechanism that would guarantee people would return to work every single day, on time, without fail. Paying people just enough to cover their lives, but not enough to exit the system, turned out to be one of the most effective mechanisms ever devised. The salary, in this context, is less a reward for labor and more a retention instrument, a monthly signal that says, "You need us as much as we need you." To understand how this works mathematically, consider what economists call the marginal propensity to consume. At lower and middle income levels, nearly every additional dollar earned is spent. Not because people are irresponsible, but because the cost structure of modern life, housing, transportation, food, healthcare, childcare, insurance expands almost automatically to absorb whatever income is available. A raise does not create savings. It creates a slightly more expensive version of the same life. Lifestyle inflation is not a character flaw. It is a predictable, well-documented behavioral response to incremental income increases in an environment where status, comfort, and social belonging are all priced and marketed continuously. The numbers bear this out at scale. Research consistently shows that the majority of households across developed economies report living paycheck to paycheck, not at poverty-level incomes, but at median and even above median incomes. In the United States, surveys conducted across the last decade repeatedly find that a significant portion of households earning between $75,000 and $100,000 annually report they could not comfortably absorb a $1,000 emergency expense without financial disruption. The salary grows, the expenses grow with it, and the distance between income and crisis remains essentially constant. This is not an accident of individual behavior. It is the statistical signature of a system functioning exactly as designed. There is also a psychological dimension to this that rarely gets examined carefully. Human beings are extraordinarily poor at evaluating absolute financial position. We evaluate relative position. We compare ourselves to neighbors, colleagues, social media representations of peers, and the implied lifestyle standards of our income bracket. This is called social comparison theory, and it has profound financial consequences. When your peer group earns more, your baseline sense of what is normal and necessary adjusts upward. When your employer gives you a raise, the new income level quickly becomes the new normal, and the previous level begins to feel inadequate. The psychological experience of financial progress evaporates faster than the financial progress itself, which means people are perpetually running toward a threshold of comfort that moves at the same speed they do. This is further reinforced by what behavioral economists call hedonic adaptation, the human tendency to return to a stable baseline of satisfaction regardless of changes in circumstance. A salary increase produces a genuine, measurable improvement in mood and perceived well-being. But that effect fades within months. The new income level becomes invisible, expected, unremarkable, and the mind begins looking forward again toward the next raise, the next promotion, the next increment, as the thing that will finally produce the stability and ease that the last one promised but didn't quite deliver. This cycle does not reflect weakness. It reflects the predictable operation of a cognitive system that was never designed for the modern financial environment. The structural reinforcement of this cycle is what makes it so difficult to escape. Consider the debt architecture that surrounds the average working adult. Mortgages are calibrated to income. Lenders typically approve loans up to a fixed multiple of annual salary, which means a raise does not create financial slack, it creates borrowing capacity. Student loans, car loans, and revolving credit operate similarly, expanding in proportion to income rather than in opposition to it. The financial services industry is sophisticated in its understanding of income psychology. Products are priced at the edges of affordability. Subscription tiers are designed to capture the maximum a given income bracket will sustain without canceling. And credit limits are extended precisely when they are most likely to be used. Every layer of the consumer financial system is tuned to absorb income at the rate it arrives, leaving workers solvent but not free. The critical threshold. The point at which the mathematical relationship between income and dependency begins to shift, is not a salary number. It is a ratio. Specifically, it is the ratio of passive or investment income to total living expenses. When that ratio is 0, which it is for most wage earners, the employment relationship is total. Every month of not working is a month of financial deterioration. But as that ratio begins to rise, as assets generate income independent of labor, the leverage in the employment relationship shifts. This is why the mechanisms that keep that ratio at 0 for most workers are worth understanding clearly. Low savings rates, high consumption norms, debt structures that absorb income, and the absence of financial education in institutional settings all serve, functionally, if not intentionally, to keep the passive income ratio low and the dependency on wages high. None of this means that salaries are malicious or that employers are engaged in deliberate suppression of worker wealth. The system is more impersonal than that. It is the aggregate output of millions of individual decisions by employers, lenders, marketers, product designers, and policymakers, each of which is locally rational and collectively produces a structure that is remarkably effective at keeping labor markets functioning and workforces stable. Understanding that structure is not about anger or resentment, it is about clarity. You cannot navigate a system you cannot see, and most people spend their entire working lives inside a financial architecture they were never given a map for. The map, simplified, looks like this. Wages are designed to be spent. Debt is designed to absorb savings. Lifestyle is designed to expand with income. And the financial products most aggressively marketed to working adults are the ones that generate the least long-term independence. Awareness of this structure does not automatically change it, but it changes the questions a person asks. Instead of asking how to earn more, the more structurally significant question is how to widen the gap between income and expenditure, and how to redirect that gap toward assets that generate returns independent of continued employment. This is not a secret. It is simply a question that the default architecture of modern financial life is not designed to prompt. The workers who exit the cycle most effectively are not always the ones who earn the most. They are the ones who recognize the cycle early, understood the mechanics clearly, and made decisions that were structurally different from the ones the system was designed to encourage. That recognition is available to anyone, and it begins, as most things do, with understanding exactly what you are inside of before you try to move through it.